there, it is Jo from Minerva, and today I have a quick all-in-one project, which is to make a skirt with an elasticated waistband in plisse or plissé. I checked out the pronunciation of this, and a US website would suggest plissé and a UK website says plisse, so I'll call it plisse. Plisse fabric is a fabric that is permanently crinkled. It has like permanent tiny pleats. The pleats might not necessarily be even, they might be slightly random, so you get this crinkle texture, an element of stretch in the cross grain and the straight grain, but it's definitely got more in the width. You can check that out on our website description. And this fabric is called Lavelle Black, and it also comes in ivory. On our website there are also some other pleated, pre-pleated fabrics or plisse fabrics, so you can have a look at those. I'm working with a black today just because it's quite universal, and I'm going to make a 30-minute plisse skirt. If you want to know more top tips on how to sew plisse and work with it, then I've made a separate video in case you don't want to make this actual skirt, you want to make a different garment, so you could check that out. But today we're going to crack on with the skirt. The skirt is self-drafted, so there isn't a pattern. You will need some waistband, and I've got quite a plushy wide waistband. This is a sort of elastic you get at the top of boxer shorts. I will put that in the product description below. So you'll just need the fabric, the waistband and some black thread. You can make this skirt on a normal sewing machine. You don't need an overlocker, and it's really quick and easy, and it makes a very flattering skirt. Let's head over and cut out our fabric. You need to measure from your waist to your hemline. That's it. You can put the width of the plisse stretch around your waist and check that when it's folded in half, you've got enough hip room to go around your waist, hips or your widest part. And then you're going to cut your fabric in its width so that you have one rectangle. It's difficult to mark this fabric, it's black, but also because it's crinkly, I'm finding it tricky to use my wheel. It's hard to mark with a pen because you'll keep just pulling it. So I'm using some silk pins to make a cut line. And you want the fabric to be in its relaxed state, so don't stretch it or anything. If you use a set square, I've got a gridded table, which is helpful because then I've got my fabric square with a line on here, and then I can put this edge of my ruler against that same line. And then I know I'm getting a straight hem. And you want to get this cut to be as good as it can be while it's flat on the table, because this is going to be the hem and we're not going to finish it. So with plisse fabric, it doesn't fray, and the bottom of your fabric will be your hem line. So you need to make this cut that you're going to do now really accurate. You can use scissors or a rotary cutter against a ruler. The rotary cutter is great if you're good with it. You can get a really straight line. Make sure it's got a new blade in it because you don't want it to give you any little jaggedy edges. Or if you think you've got more control with scissors, you can cut along here, but you need some nice long strokes because you don't want to be sort of nicking the fabric and making little uneven edge along your hem. These sorts of skirts work best if they are calf length or full length, because you get the sort of figure hugging shape of around your upper body, and then it sort of hangs really straight and towards your ankle. If you make them short, I don't think they're quite so successful, but the long ones make really flattering skirts. We're going to have one seam on our skirt, and this seam will run down the centre back, and the reason for that is so that both sides will just be the plisse. You won't have any seams, because if you don't sew exactly inside one of the pleats, then you might get a little bit of a sort of knobbly seam, and you don't want that on your hip shape because you'll lose that curvy silhouette. So the centre back seam is the one seam in this skirt. We're going to pin this together and sew it on the machine. You can sew your seam, side seam if you're making it wider, or your back seam if you're doing one seam. And you need to do a little test on a piece of fabric. And I found that my sharps needle was really great on this fabric. This fabric isn't knitted, it is a woven fabric, a little bit like a sort of lining fabric almost, and it's got a very close weave, so I needed a sharps needle to punctuate through that. But if you're using a stretch piece, then you might need a stretch needle, but it's definitely worth doing a test. If you can reduce your pressure foot, if you've got a machine that allows you to do that, you can give yourself a little bit more room under the foot so that it doesn't crush down the pleats. And I've also found that mine is better when I do a slightly longer stitch length, so I'm on stitch length 3. Start with your needle down and don't start off the edge of the fabric. Make sure you're sort of a couple of millimeters onto the fabric, because this fabric does want to go down into the throat plate. So don't start on the end, it'll chew it down. Just start a little bit onto the fabric. You're going to put an elastic band across here, so that will be in the seam allowance. And at the hem end, you can forwards and backwards, but do it really, really slowly. Use your forefinger on your left hand just to keep that down flat. You might get here, look, you can see it's sort of just coming, you might get a little bit of blowout, so it might just press that out. So just try and keep it all together. And you need to try and sew as straight as you can. Now you won't exactly get between a pleat, but you need to be sewing perpendicular to those pleats. Try not to go across them. If you go across them, you will get a different texture on the right side. And towards the end, make sure that you've got that lined up, because remember, we're not going to hem this, so that all needs to be in line. Just going to go slowly. So that the end of the fabric keeps that continuous run. And the seam is in there, that's the back. This is the side. Hopefully you can't see the seam very much. It's just here, here, and here. So it should look like a continuous pleated tube. Let's take a look at putting the elastic along the top. You can measure your waist, and you could put the elastic around your waist if you want, then you can get your comfort fit. Now, two things might happen here. You might have a waistband that is shorter than your fabric, in which case when you apply your elastic to the skirt, you will be stretching the elastic and you will get some gathering at the top of your skirt. If your waistband is longer than the width of the fabric, so you're cutting it here, then when you apply it, you will be stretching the skirt to the elastic. So you'll do it the other way around, and that way that will be your finished look. So your pleats will be slightly open around your hip and your stomach, but as you head down you will get that narrow ankle shape. So it'll depend very much on your body shape, what sort of texture you will get around the top, but you will get a great fit. This stretches to 65 centimetres comfortably where that would still look great around the top. And then of course there's the 65 centimetres on the back. The original width of the fabric is 57 inches wide. That's 145 centimetres in width. So I haven't cut anything off the width. I've just folded the fabric in half. If you do want that element of plissé at the top of your skirt, you can cut 2 rectangles and seam down each side. Then you'll have a wider piece of fabric. This is useful if your elastic waistband is much wider than your tube of fabric when it's folded in half. Join your elastic in a complete loop. Make sure it's not twisted, and because this is going to be on the outside, you need to take a little bit of care how you put your 2 ends together. I don't know if you can see it, I've done a neat square and then with a cross in the middle. It looks neat and it can easily be on the outside of my skirt. Next, we're going to mark the waistband in quarters. We're also going to pin the skirt in quarters, and then the waistband can fit onto the top of the skirt. So you're going to have the elastic so that it's on the right side. So you've got the right side showing of the elastic, and you're going to pin it. And because I'm going to sew this from the wrong side, I don't want sometimes to be just catching the fabric and sometimes the fabric to be right on the elastic, because that will affect my hem. So I've just found a really good placement so my zigzag will be in that bit there. The zigzag will be on the edge, and I want to be catching the same amount of fabric all the way around. So 2.5 centimetres from the top of the elastic, I'm just making a little mark. Then I know that my fabric shouldn't go above that line. It's just an extra little procedure here, but you'll really be pleased with the outcome because you will definitely have the correct hem, and you don't really want to be changing the hem on plissé because it's quite difficult now that it's in a tube to recut it. It was much easier when it was flat. When you sew this, you're going to stretch your fabric so that your plisse lands flat. Now you don't want to overstretch everything because then you'll end up with a really strange sort of stretched out bubbly bit around your stomach and hips. So you want the fabric to be stretched as much as it needs for the plisse to lie relaxed on the elastic. You might want to practice this a little bit on a test piece before you do it on your real garment. You'll need a stretch stitch, so you can either use a 3-step zigzag, a normal zigzag, a lightning stitch, depends which goes through your elastic, and remember whatever stitch you choose will be shown on the right side. Right, I'll just show you how I've been doing that. So I've been stretching the elastic with my thumb and forefinger here, and I've been using my other hand to feed the pleated fabric in a relaxed state, and I'm not going past this orange dotted line. So the fabric is staying on that orange dotted line, but I'm keeping the tension on the elastic. When I get to a pin, I'll take that out. If you're finding it hard to keep the tension on the elastic between the pins, you can do a sort of halfway pin. So if you pin halfway, you don't have to hold the tension quite so firmly. Once you've attached your elastic, you should get that straight line that you were following with the orange mark that you made. You can put it closer to the edge if you want. It's just you run the risk then of it slipping off. So I like it to sort of be a little bit on. You could put it through on a second pass if you want and get it closer to the edge. You'd just have 2 rows of stitching then. If you're finding it difficult to absorb that amount of fabric into your waistband, so say your waistband is quite a bit smaller than the width of the fabric, then you can run a a gathering stitch through the top of your plissé and just pull that up. I'd go for a hand gathering stitch rather than a machine gathering stitch. You can just pull it in a little bit, sew it on, then when you take the gathering stitch out, you'll still have the maximum stretch and drape of the fabric. This is a sample skirt, so I just did a few different things on the back. So this is the smoothest you get when the fabric is stretched a little bit, so it's not quite as pleated. Here I gathered a bit. So you can see here you get a little bit of gathering, and here the fabric is just eased in on the elastic. So all of those were applied in a slightly different way. But you'll have to experiment to see how you can put your elastic on. If when you pin it into quarters, you think, gosh, how am I going to ease and keep the stretch on that? You don't want this to be overstretched. So you just need it to take in the fabric like this. If it's too much, you need to gather like this. And if your elastic is maybe a little bit bigger than the width of the fabric, then it will be a little more open textured like this. Okay, this is the shape you will get of the skirt. So the skirt will give you a silhouette that goes down at the ankle. I don't have any side seams because I kept my seam at the centre back. The elastic waistband is really comfortable. I'm wearing it with the DP Studio pleated blouse. So actually, if you made this in something like a black satin or a sheer one, you could definitely wear this for evening wear. It's got a really lovely feel. Mine goes to the floor, so but you don't need any slits or splits for walking because the pleece gives you all the room that you need. A really quick and simple 30-minute skirt. Hope you might give that project a little try. Just from 2 simple products, it makes a really fabulous skirt. It's great for summer. It's really light to wear. You can wear a half slip underneath if you don't want any sort of light to shine through, because even with the black, then you do get a little bit of sheerness through the skirt. You can change the width of the elastic, so you can use a narrower elastic. You can put your zigzag closer to the edge. I was today just showing you the techniques of how to put it together. We would love to see anything that you have made, so do make a free account over at Minerva. You can share your makes, inspire other Minerva makers, and check out some of our other videos and tutorials. Thank you very much for watching. See you again soon.